Alright, so I want to make a soft wash training video from the very beginning of a job. So we just pulled up the customer's house, let them know we're here. We're in the driveway. We made sure all the windows and doors are shut. Now we're just going to pull our green hose off, connect it to the customer's hose, or hose bib, and then let our water tank fill as we get the rest of the job ready. Alright, we're all hooked up right here. Before you connect to a customer's water source, you just want to let it run for a minute, or actually only like 10 or 15 seconds, just to get any gunk out of the hose that might have been sitting in there. And at this house, we didn't have enough hose to reach the spigot, so we're using a little bit of theirs. That's where our start. And just wrap around the house here to the truck. All right, next step is going to be getting a yard sign out. So we want to have a yard sign out while we're working, not just after the job. That way, you know, while we're making all the noise and being loud with the machines, they know what's going on here, and it'll pull some eyes and hopefully get us some business. It's kind of hard to do one-handed, but I'm just taking the stickers off one of these step stakes here. Bear with me. Trash there for a second. I'm just gonna take it out. Toss it in the side. So you always just want to make sure that you're kind of putting the step stake somewhere near the middle of the sign. You get the hang of it after doing a couple. Slide it in there. These ones are short. And then just toss it out front. I always like to pick a spot where it looks like they might not mow right around the sign. That way it can stay in the lawn for a while. Here's the house we're doing, by the way. It's all vinyl siding. New construction, not really very dirty. They're just concerned with the dust and dirt on the house. All right, so next step is just gonna be getting your gray hose ready, your high pressure hose, pulling it to the furthest point of the house. That way we finish in the closest part of the house and we can just reel up with the hoses right in front of the reel. But another thing worth mentioning is some jobs the water is going to be filling real slow, so you have to keep an eye on how much water you have left. That way you don't run the machine with no water in the tank, which is very bad for you. You never want to do that. Also, just make sure no hoses are ever sitting right on top of the machine. It'll get too hot. You melt the hose or something. So now I'm just going to start pulling the gray hose. Unlock it right here. Give a little bit of slack. Try to do this one-handed, and then I'm just going to pull it out into the front lawn. Car's going to pull about 100 foot out to right here, and then pull it around the house, and we'll most likely just do the back first, so I'll get to that. All right, so I pulled the hose to the back of the house. Just going to start pre-wetting the back. Pre-wetting is when you rinse all of the windows and then get like any solids or anything off the gutters. And we do that to prevent like a streaky window at the end of the job. So usually want it to be on water first, and this is a downstream injector, so if the ball valve is in line with the flow of water, then you're on water. But if you turn it like this, which way is it? Like this, then you're on soap. So I'm gonna go ahead and start up the machine. I just filled it with gas, run to the back of the house and start a pre-wetting. All right, I'm about to start pre-wetting here. Just gonna hit all the windows and the deck, pretty much just anything that we don't want to clean. All right, so I want to do a little bit of a voiceover here and just kind of explain, my thought process, the processes that we use during a house wash. So what is soft washing is gonna be the first thing I say. Soft washing is like a modern alternative to power washing. It's low pressure soap application. So rather than blasting away dirt and algae with high pressure, we're going to use low pressure soaps and algicides to actually kill the growth that's on the house. The guarantee that we make for house washes is everything organic will come down, but things that are inorganic like paint stains, rust stains, copper stains, anything like that isn't going to come down. So here you see me pre-wetting the back of the house. Pre-wetting, like I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, is when you just go around and hit all of the windows, pretty much anything you don't want to clean. Here we weren't contracted to do the deck, so we're just going to give the deck a little bit of rinse. The main thought process behind this, I guess, is we want to keep chemical off of things that we're not cleaning. So when chemical does hit it, it's number one, it's diluted, and number two, it's not hitting a dry surface, which can end up damaging the surface. I think I'm just about pre-wetting. I think I'm just about done pre-wetting here in the back, so I'll walk back here and I'll be back in 1 second. All right, now I'll go switch to soap. All right, now I'm soaping the back of the house. All right, so what you didn't see in that cut right there is me walking back to the truck with the machine still on and switching that downstream injector ball valve to get to soap. When you switch from soap to water or from water to soap, you're going to have, either soap or water still in the 200 foot of high pressure line. So that's why you just saw me right there spraying the foundation, waiting to see those suds, which signifies that, we're spraying soap. When we're applying, we want to make sure we coat everything evenly, but nothing has to be soaked. It just has to be wet, especially with vinyl siding houses. They come clean very easily, and you want to soap bottom to top. That way it prevents like a streaky clean. Sometimes if you spray up top first, water will run down, soap will run down and kind of stain and clean areas that you didn't want to clean yet. Another thing to be noticed or to keep in mind when soaping is number one, work your way bottom to top. You have to coat everything evenly, so that includes windowsills, all the fascia boards. The most commonly missed areas are probably around windowsills, and up at the top of peaks at at the fascia boards. Another thing to keep in mind is when you're spraying corners, you have to be mindful of where your overspray goes. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier in the video, we want to keep chemical off of things that we are not trying to clean. So, for instance, if I was spraying this right corner over here and I started getting chemical on the neighbor's house and I didn't realize it, then maybe one day the neighbor walks outside and sees that we hit a little bit of their house and maybe it looks bad, and now he makes us do a whole house wash at his house. You never know, so you just have to be careful. Especially if you're spraying around corners where it might be landing on driveways. A lot of times, like freshly sealed asphalt driveways can be very sensitive to the chemicals that we use, which is, a bleach-based cleaner. So if you get bleach on like a freshly sealed driveway, then it dries on that driveway, you might be screwed. You might have to reseal the driveway, so you really have to be careful. Here's another thing I just thought about. So when applying soap and even when rinsing, we want to stay on the fan pattern as much as possible. And I don't think I really highlighted, the tools that we use in this video, but what I'm using there is called the M5. The M5 is the twist nozzle at the end of this gun. And you can twist it, to the left, I think, and make more of an open fan spray pattern. Or you can tighten it and turn it to the right, and it'll give you more of a stream for longer distance shots. You pretty much want to stay on fan for as long as possible. That way everything gets coated very nicely. The stream, it might not coat things as evenly. And also when rinsing, you want to stay as low pressure as possible. So that's why the fan is going to be, your best friend when rinsing. When applying, you can usually apply almost the entire side of a house with just the fan. And I think the rinse is coming up here, so I'll cut away. All right, now I'm gonna go switch to water and rinse it. All right, now I'll rinse the back. All right, so like I mentioned right there, I just switched back to water. You're gonna see me spray at the foundation and maybe even spray a little bit on the house here because there's still soap left in the line. So it's never really going to hurt putting a little bit more soap on everything, but like I said, nothing has to be soaked. It just has to be wet. Here I am spraying at the foundation, waiting for the suds to stop, and then it looks like they stopped right there. So now we're going to go ahead and rinse the back of this house. We like to break house washes up into sections, so we'll usually either do 2 or 1 sides of the house, at a time. If it's a smaller house, we can do 2 sides just because, you know, it takes the same amount of time as doing a larger house, just the back. So here we started in the back, obviously, and now we're rinsing. So we're gonna rinse top to bottom always, always rinse top to bottom, never bottom to top. That way you're not cleaning things twice. And I usually like to break things up into even smaller sections, you know, within a part of a house wash. So I'll rinse like all the fascia boards at the peak, all of the soffits, and then maybe just that top triangle of the roof line at the right where I'm rinsing right now. And then I'll move down to the left windows and then maybe do the middle windows and then the right windows, you know, all kind of separately, just so I can keep track of what's been rinsed and what hasn't. Rinsing should take way, way longer than both pre-wetting and applying soap. It's easily the most important step of the process, and you really have to be thorough. We cannot leave chemical on anything. By the time our truck leaves the driveway, there can't be chemical left on anything on the property. No soap on anything. And throughout this video, you'll probably hear me use soap and chemical interchangeably, so just keep that in mind. Here you see me rinsing the windows. I might be using the shooter tip here, which is, you know, next to the M5 on the gun, and it's just a quick connect action to switch that. I'll use the shooter tip a lot when rinsing, especially high surfaces, but like I mentioned a little bit earlier, once we get lower, we really only want to use the fan. That way, you know, I mean, if you are using the shooter tip for right in front of you, then it's essentially like you're pressure washing the house, which is not what we want to do. Here you see me hitting all the windows. You want to make sure you hit the windows really, really good. Almost all of the time, soft washing is going to dry on, you know, after a house gets soft washed, the windows are going to dry all spotty, and that's okay. We never promise any customers that their houses or their windows will come out spot free, but you know, it's something to keep in mind. We want to mitigate it as much as possible, though. Yep, so here I'm just rinsing that little corner. And I believe at this house, if I remember correctly, on the left side, like right in the corner of that deck over there, they had a lot of bugs and whatnot. So, like I mentioned earlier, this house really didn't have any algae on it. Not a lot of organic growth. But, you know, they were concerned with all the bugs and the dirt from the new construction, you know, going up around their house. You'll notice I'm still on fan pattern. And every once in a while when I'm rinsing a house, I'll go around and hit where overspray might have hit. So like you saw, I just hit the railings of those decks. And that's just because, you know, as I was applying here, if we're being realistic, I'm sure some soap got onto the deck. But like I said, we don't want to leave that. We don't want to run any risks of ruining any building material when we don't have to. Alright, so here you'll see me hitting a little bit of a trick shot. This is when I think I tightened up the M5 and maybe even use the shooter tip to get that weird back corner. You could bring a ladder back here, but I just kept it on the truck for this job. If you can't really see, you know, if a roof is creating a blind spot in an area you're trying to rinse, really just try to spend extra time up there. You know, hit all of the or just throw a lot of water up there, honestly. Like, really just want to make sure it's soaked, and kind of just trust the process that the water's getting up there and rinsing like it's supposed to. And like I mentioned, always rinsing top to bottom. So over here, you'll see me hitting all of the gutters. Usually I like to hit the face of the gutters first. That way we're getting any tough stains off of there with a little bit of pressure. And then hitting the area in between the soffits and the gutters. and then really just hitting the soffits and transitioning down onto the vinyl. Again, breaking everything up into sections. I probably did like the left of those two windows there in a section, and then in between them, and then to the right side is probably something like what I did. I don't really remember though. I believe this video doesn't cut, and we just move over to the left side of the house next. So we'll start pre-wetting that in a minute after I finish rinsing here. But like I mentioned, rinsing is going to take a lot longer than applying and pre-wetting. So just bear with me there. All right, so as I finish up, or as I wrap up rinsing in the back here, notice what the last thing that I do is. I'm going to go ahead and hit this whole deck, hit all of the patio furniture up there. I think there's a couple tables up there, and then push any soap that I see on the deck off of the side. This is because as we're rinsing top to bottom on the house, it's inevitable that some of the overspray or some of the runoff comes down onto the deck and it's just sitting there. So we have to be mindful of where the soap ends up at the end of the job or at the end of the rinse, and always trying to spray down any surfaces that we don't want to clean. Now here I'm just going to be pulling all of our slack onto the left side of that deck because we're going to be moving onto the right side of the house. Like I mentioned, maybe I might have mentioned earlier, but we want to make sure that we start in the furthest part of the house from the hoses. As you start working, you'll get the gist of where you should park for certain jobs. But this one we pulled into the driveway, and then I pulled the hoses out in front of the house and around the right side, and only reached to the back. So that's why we started in the back. That way we just work our way closer and closer to our truck, and we finish right in front of the hose reels, and it's real easy to reel up that way. Here we're going to hit this right side of the house, and like I mentioned, we break the house washes up into sections, and this is a bigger house, so we did just go one side at a time. It looks like it's getting a little bit windy, and I remember the last side of this house was actually a real pain, because it got so windy. It can get tough to wash houses in the wind. But look, here I'm just pre-wetting all the windows, and this house wasn't very dirty, not a lot of algae, so wasn't really concerned with any gutters or anything like that, any of the fascia boards. I didn't turn the machine off from when I did the back, or when I did the entire back, because I haven't shut the machine off yet this job, but I just wrapped right around the house and got started on the right side. And here you see me wetting down the plants. So this is very important. The soap that we use is, like I mentioned, it's a bleach-based cleaner. It's not clean, and it's not safe for plants in its rawest form. And if you leave it on plants, just as if you leave the soap on a driveway, it's going to stain the driveway. It can kill leaves on the plants. We've done it before. It really only happens with stucco and roofs and jobs when you have to use a higher percentage chemical mix. But you can shock the leaves if you don't wet down the plants enough. So I always recommend, if there's any areas where it looks like you might get some overspray, and notice there how I hit the deck a little bit, and now I'm just going to wait for the soap or for the water to clear the line and soap to get all the way through. So just always make sure you're wetting down plants. As a rule of thumb, you can never ever wet down plants too much. It's not a thing. So it's never going to harm you to just say, wait a second, maybe I should hit this plant a little bit more. And some of them can get expensive, so it could be an expensive mistake if you simply forget to rinse a plant. So I definitely wouldn't recommend that. I want to talk about a little bit more about how the chemical actually works. So we buy the chemical. It's called sodium hypochlorite. It's a bleach-based cleaner. Sodium hypochlorite is the active ingredient in bleach. It's the active ingredient in pool shock. So if you think about putting pool shock in a pool, it kills all the green. If you put pool shock on your house, pretty much it kills all the green. But you buy it in different strengths. There's 6%. I know there's 10%. There's 12.5%. We buy the 12.5%. But you don't use 12.5% strength to clean anything. What comes out of this downstream injector is 1.5%. So like you saw earlier in the video, there's a chemical tank and there's a water tank. The chemical is filled with 12.5% sodium hypochlorite, and then it goes through the power washer, and the power washer obviously also pulls water from our water tank, and it dilutes the chemical to a 1.5% strength, or a 1.25% strength maybe. That's all you need to clean vinyl siding, Generation 2 composite decks. What else do you clean? 1.5, maybe brick sometimes. And you'll see me wiping my face here because a lot of the chemicals coming back and hit me in the face because it's so windy. 3% is used on like stucco. Sometimes it goes as high as 4% on stucco. Roofs are anywhere from 4.5 to 6%, depending on how dirty they are. Post-treating and pre-treating concrete, we're usually around 3 to 4%. But that can be a topic for a different video. This one, I just want to focus on how to wash a vinyl siding house. And if the house is all vinyl siding, you're pretty much only going to be using 1.5%, which we usually just call house wash. When we downstream a house, we just call it house washing. So if I say hit something with house wash, it just means use the pressure washer in the downstream injector and the M5 gun to put some chemical down. And of course you'll have to switch that ball valve from water to chemical when you do that. Looks like everything's coated up there. I'll probably walk back to the truck here and switch back to water to give everything a little rinse. So like I mentioned, there's still going to be some soap in the line, so we'll go ahead and hit areas that looks like either they need to be hit again, or just areas that you might not be as confident in that you hit enough. Hitting the windowsills, hitting the windows, keeping everything wet. We never want to let chemical dry on anything, so sometimes if you're doing big portions of a house and you notice something's drying, you should just go over and hit it. Whether you're using chemical or fresh water, you just don't want to let anything dry. Looks like we're on water here. We're going to start rinsing top to bottom. I'll start with that peak and all of the fascia boards. If you don't know, fascia boards is just that area in between the shingle roofs there and the soffits. So it's kind of what's the vertical surface highest on the house. It's what the peaks are made out of. Hitting all that fascia board, working my way down nice and slowly. Rinsing should take 2, 3, 4 times as long as applying takes. There's some dryer vents up there, I think. That's what those little vents that you're seeing in the top right are of the house.
Just be careful around stuff like that. Try to spray above it, and then just let gravity rinse the rest. It'll pull the water down over the vents. We don't want to push any water into it from the underside and cause issues with all the lint in there. Saturating the lint probably won't make for a very functional dryer vent. A lot of times when you have downspouts on like the corners of houses like you have over here, you'll have to hit them from multiple angles because obviously they're squares. So if you hit it from where I'm standing right there, then the right side might not get cleaned, and if you hit it from the right side, then the left side might not get cleaned. So you have to make sure you apply and rinse downspouts from all angles. Also have to make sure you do the same thing with deck railings, columns in the fronts of houses, pretty much anything with weird angles. And here you'll see how I'm hitting all the downspout from the right side, and obviously I think I already hit it from the left. So now I'm going to hop over to the left side of the house, wash all of that fascia board down, and then it looks like the sections for this house where, if you look at the peak and just draw a line straight down, looks like those were my sections. So I pretty much already did the right side. Now I'm just heading over to the left side, all of the vinyl siding, working my way down nice and slowly, putting a little bit of pressure where it looks like it's needed. And I think I'm on the shooter tip here, just because it was so windy. You need a little bit of a tighter stream. That way you can cut through the wind and not get the soap and water blown back in your face. This is kind of funny. If you look at the road right there on the left, right there, that was a truck from another power washing company who, I wonder if they've been on this house and then saw me working on it. But I don't know. They're out there doing their own thing. There's plenty of money to go around. A little tip if you're starting off a power washing business, don't worry about the other guy. I mean, there's plenty of work in every town to to feed all the companies in the area, at least for the most part, for most markets. Maybe not down in Florida, but at least up here in Pennsylvania, there's enough to go around. So don't get mad about the other guys. Here I'm just doing that same thing with that downspout on the left side, rinsing top to bottom. And here you'll see I'm back on the M5 gun, and I'm on a little bit of a fan pattern just to make sure that we're not pushing any water behind the siding, into the windows, anything like that. We don't, we just want to be careful when we're rinsing. We don't want to use too much pressure where it's not necessary. The only reason we were using the shooter tip is because it was so windy. Otherwise, we'd usually just use the M5 and tighten up the stream. It gives you a better flow. More water comes out of it per minute. There's an AC unit. Usually want to rinse those off a little bit. Try not to put too much water into them, but it's really not going to hurt it. The thing sits outside all day. I've seen some people tarp over AC units, but I don't really understand why you would have to do that. Just be careful around them. Give them a light little rinse. Don't go nuts around them. Here's a little bit of attention to detail you want to pay attention to. There's some sitting soap and water on top of that storm door or storm window, whatever you want to call that thing. So just go ahead and push that off. Just little stuff like that to make the customer's life easier. You don't ever want a customer to step outside after we're done a house wash and have to clean up after you. All right, here we are at the front of the house. Doesn't look like, looks like it's a little bit oversaturated, but I think we'll have to work with it. Maybe I'll be able to edit this in a second. I'll do that when I'm done. But here pre-wetting, of course, there's a lot of windows in the front here, and we actually broke the front of the house up into two different sections. Just to the right of that garage door, if you draw a line straight up and down, to the right and to the left, those were our two sections. So this first, section on the right, I wanted to keep that relatively small and only soap over there. because two things: the blue door, the blue front door, kind of concerns me. There's some blue Sherwin-Williams paints that will react poorly with bleach-based cleaners, such as the ones that we use. So you always want to make sure that you're keeping blue doors, black doors, wooden doors, anything like that, very saturated throughout the entire job, and you're paying close attention to detail of whether or not the chemical's reacting poorly with the door. So there you see me hit the door a little bit more. Now I'm going to wait for soap to come out. Give it 1 second, and then you will see me here as soon as I notice the suds. I walk up to the door and I put a little tiny spritz on the bottom left corner. That's called a test spot. So now there's a little bit of soap on there, and we're going to wait a couple of minutes. I'll probably soap the right side of this section, and then I'll check back at that door and make sure that it hasn't reacted bad with the paint. If you notice it looks like it's fading or it brightened up the paint or anything like that, you want to stop immediately and maybe even tarp off the door, skip the section entirely, or just give me a call or something, honestly. Soaping bottom to top over here, making sure we hit all the window sills and the gutters very nicely. And areas like this, this front porch, like this overhang thing, can be tough because you see those 3 columns. You have to make sure you soap those evenly, and you rinse them very well, because a lot of times you'll push, if you're trying to rinse the front side, you'll just push the chemical onto the back side, which just creates a problem, on a different side, obviously. I'll hit all the gutters here, and the way I like to tackle these things is hit everything that we can from the outside, so without standing under that canopy. So I'll hit, the left, front, and right side of all of those posts or those beams, columns, whatever you want to call them. I'll hit the gutters and the soffits and the fascia boards on the outside of the canopy, and then I'll hit all the siding on the inside, while I'm still standing on the outside. That way, when I do stand on that porch, that front concrete porch, I'll hit all the front doors here and everything as well. When I stand on that porch, I don't have a lot of surface area to cover from in there, so now I'm not going to get soaked with chemical or water as I'm standing under there. Then I'll move on to the top section. I think this is not a lot of surface area, so it goes pretty quick. Just hit all the gutters and all of the windows very evenly and nicely, and then I'll hop under this porch, I think, in 1 second. Looks like the wind was frustrating me a little bit. Yeah, I'll switch to the shooter tip and try to reach that peak up there. So I'm hitting all that evenly, and then eventually I'll bounce under the porch. Here, this is what I was talking about. Keeping everything wet. I noticed the windows were drying, so I tried to hit them a little bit, keep them wet. Then I'll hop under here, and you'll see I only have a little bit to spray. So it's the inside of those columns, obviously some of the siding, and that inside corner. Just real quick. There it is. So there's a lot of spiders and bugs and stuff in there. And obviously I'm hitting a lot of plants here as well. So, you got to be careful. Make sure you rinse the plants when you're done a house wash as well. I'll go switch back, and here there wasn't a lot of algae, there wasn't a lot of organic growth, so I wasn't letting it dwell very long. Usually if there's bad algae, we'll dwell from anywhere to 5 to 10 minutes. If things are really bad, sometimes like on Carolina beaded siding, or just vinyl siding where it's really, really caked up, maybe we'll let it dwell for like 15 minutes sometimes, and sometimes we even have to do 2 soaps. So here I'm going to hit everything with a soap a little bit, keep everything wet, and then I will spray at the steps there, waiting for fresh water. Switch back to the shooter tip so we get a little bit of a tighter stream and start rinsing top to bottom. Also, I'm not going to put any sound on this clip because the phone was right next to the machine, so it was kind of loud. You see how much time is spent rinsing, even just on that little tiny section up at the top of the house. Keeping the door wet. Usually when you switch from soap to water and there's a black or blue or a wooden front door, just rinse the front door right away. There's no point in letting chemicals sit on it. Gonna keep going top to bottom, hit all the soffits and fascia and gutters. Work our way down the vinyl siding. Make sure you always rinse the windows real good. I'm not going to speed any of this video up just because I really want to cover, how long it's supposed to take. Like, it's not supposed to be a 30 minutes in and out project. Like, I think this house took me probably 2 hours, honestly. Um, Maybe a little bit less. I know I was on the phone with one of my buddies for a minute, which kind of ate up a lot of time. But, I was probably at this house for 2 hours, spending most of the time rinsing it, obviously. Here you see me rinsing the columns. This is just like downspouts. I mean, you got to make sure you rinse them from the inside, from the outside, from left, from the right, from every single angle. That way you know for sure that all of the soap is off it. You're not just pushing it around in circles. Stuff like that. Here I'm rinsing off that right side. And I haven't hit the canopy yet, or the overhang. I'm not really sure what to call that thing. The front porch, we'll just call it. I haven't hit the front porch yet because you always want to rinse top to bottom. So I figured I'd hit that top section above the porch and then that right section. And now we can move in to the porch because we're just going to be spraying in like every which way because of the weird angles on the columns and the rest of the overhang. So rinsing is the same thing with applying for this. We're going to hit everything that we can from the outside. Just hold going a nice fan pattern. Spray everything from the outside, all the gutters, all that soffit. Hit anywhere where overspray might have went. So I'll hit that little section. And I'm rinsing those garage, or not the garage doors, the columns a little bit. Hitting all of the roof under that porch. Like I said, everything's always top to bottom. So soffits under the porches can be kind of tough sometimes. You'll just have to make sure you really go slow and work your way around, pushing everything towards the house and then rinsing it down the house. Still hitting everything I can from the outside. Making sure I got all the windows good. And I'll get the garage, or not the, and I'll get the front door again, I think. There you go, rinse the roof or the soffits really on top of that porch. And then when you rinse those soffits, you're probably just pushing the soap towards the house. Then you'll just have to rinse the front door again. Again, you can never rinse the front door enough, or I mean too much. A little bit of water is never going to hurt it, but who knows? A little bit of soap might hurt it. Really taking my time around the front door. You just want to be very careful. Then I move on to the inside. Like I said, there's a ton of bugs and stuff up there. So I'm just going to go on fan, rinse that inside corner and all of the inside of the columns. I'll spend a lot of time up there rinsing because there's a lot of bugs, a lot of dirt, some eggs even. It was kind of gross. Spider eggs, I mean. All right, so I think my camera died there or something before I could finish wrapping up that side of the house. But this is the left side, or the front portion, and I believe I'm soaping here. I already pre-wet. So here's a little POV action, I guess. Just soaping bottom to top. When you're on top of a driveway, or when your runoff is going to be going onto a driveway, you want to be careful. Like I mentioned earlier, you don't want anything drying on the driveway, so try to keep your spray very light. Just get things wet. Don't have to soak things, especially above the driveway. I'm going to hit these weird little peaks here. Yeah. And then I think I'll swing around to the right and then hit the other one. All right, I just closed my window so you couldn't hear that lawnmower, but I think I'm just about done soaping this area. The wind was getting pretty bad here, and see how that right window's dry and streaky? That's what I'm talking about. If you ever notice it's real bad like that, you're probably just going to want to switch to water and hit it again. At the end of this job, I actually did switch back to water and hit all the windows in the front, but it's in the direct sunlight. There's a little bit of video of me switching, just so you know what it looks like. That's me switching to, from soap to water, and I don't think I show myself rinsing this front portion, or at least most of it. Maybe I do, actually. I guess I was wrong. But that's just how you switch. I'm going to wait for there's a little visual of, you can see how sudsy that is. It's obviously soap. And then it stops. But, there's some still left on the asphalt, so I just wanted to push it off a little bit. And there's what I'm talking about. Like, I hit the window a little bit because I noticed it was real streaky. Probably even got some overspray onto the window. And now I'm just throwing water up there, top to bottom, like we always do, rinsing. Move over. Yep, and then I think that was the end of the video for that portion. But obviously, I did rinse the rest. After I rinsed that section, I went ahead and pushed all of the water off of the driveway. So what that looks like is just pretty much starting at the top of the driveway, going on a real big fan pattern and brushing, kind of foot by foot, inch by inch, I guess, just all the way down the driveway. Push everything either onto the onto the sidewalk or down off the sidewalk into the street. Here I'm getting started on the left side of the house. I think I pre-wet off camera. It looks like I'm soaping here. Yeah, definitely soaping. But just moving bottom to top. Trying to keep a good idea in my head of where I've soaped already, where I haven't. Working my way up the fascia boards. throughout the middle of the siding. And this is when the wind was getting real bad. I think it was like 4 or 5 p.m. now, and the wind was really starting to pick up. So I switched to the shooter tip, trying to get a little bit more of that peak. But I don't even think I could get it, honestly. I don't remember, but I remember I started getting kind of frustrated. Wanted to make sure the camera's still recording. So now you see why we parked how we did and why we ran the hoses the way we did. It just makes it a lot easier when your hose reels are pointing in the direction of the front lawn. That way you have a bunch of area to wrap up the hose. You can bring all the slack over there. And I think even it was either before I pre-wet or as this was dwelling, I actually wrapped up about 100 foot of that high pressure hose onto the truck, so that way I'm saving myself a little bit of work in the end. Here I switched to water, and I'm just waiting for the soap to clear the line, rinse off those trash cans a little bit, and then this is where the wind got real bad. I couldn't even hit the peak. But yeah, I think that's about all I have to cover. Yeah, like I mentioned, you want to park in the driveway so that you have plenty of room to reel up the hoses. I only have about 100 foot of high pressure hose here because I wrapped up the rest, saved myself a little bit of work. Oh, also here's another thing. I think before I rinsed this side of the house, I went ahead and shut off the customer's water, but kept everything connected. That way our buffer tank, our water tank, isn't full of water when we leave. We use the rest. They can hold 55 gallons, and the machine sprays 5.5 gallons per minute. So we have about 10 minutes to spray with a full tank. So if the tank is full when we have one side left to rinse, I'll turn that water off and then go ahead and spray the rest of that 55 gallons on the left side of the house or the last side of the house. Just because we never really want to be driving with a full tank of water. The most I would drive with is like 20 gallons of water. It's just bad for the brakes, it's bad for the transmission on the truck, and it's kind of a pain. Here I think I cut and then wait for the wind to die down a little bit. But yeah, it's about it. After I finish this house wash, there's no more footage after I finished rinsing here, but actually I think the phone died again on this side. But last thing you want to do is just reel up the hose, put everything back in its proper place, run through all of your equipment, make sure you're not forgetting anything. We've forgotten plenty of surface cleaners and wands at customers' houses before just sitting in the lawn. Wrap up your high pressure hose, and then you can go ahead and disconnect your feed hose, reel it back up in the back of the truck. Make sure your ladders are tied down. Make sure the yard sign's out in the yard. And then you can go ahead and knock, ask the customer if they'd like to step outside and take a look around at everything. And then, yeah, you pretty much should be good to go. Collect payment, whether they're paying cash or check or swiping their card. Tell them that, we'd appreciate a good Google review. And to let us know if they ever need anything in the future. So, yeah, that's the end of the video. I hope to make some more videos in the future, just trying to help out power washing business owners. So follow along, and hopefully more videos to come in the future. I'll talk to you guys soon, all right?